So my vision for the future is that migrants and refugees are seen as an incredible asset to the societies and countries that they go to, because they do contribute a lot in economic and social life.
Welcome to the Startup Palette Show. When you think of startups, you think of Silicon Valley. We're going to venture beyond the valley and paint a picture of the startup ecosystem, featuring diverse founders, investors, and operators. We'll hear about their origin stories that shape them, the highlights, the lowlights, the best practice, and their visions for the future. Join me as we get a front seat to witness the phenomenal role of these pathbreakers. I'm your host, Preeti Mohan. Let's get started. Welcome to the Startup Palette Show. Today, we're joined by Usman Iftikhar, and he runs the Catalysr program for migrants and refugees. Welcome, Usman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Preeti.
Tell us about where you came from, how your childhood was.
Yes, I'm from Pakistan originally, and I came here to Australia back in 2013. So I've sort of lived over half of my life in Pakistan and the rest here. So I kind of feel like I've sort of spent time in both places. But I grew up, so my dad was in the army and is a doctor in the army in Pakistan. So we basically moved cities every 2-3 years. I kind of felt like I was a migrant even when I was a young person, just going and like trying to make new friends, understand even different cultures. It's very diverse, depending on Pakistan. So having this experience of making new friends, learning about a new place, and I literally loved cricket. That was sort of my personal hobby / passion. So I would.
Did you play?
I played a lot of cricket. And watched cricket and just spent a lot of time in cricket and do it on the street, do it in the balcony, do it everywhere, even in the house, and sometimes broke stuff. And my mum wasn't very happy about it. So in my childhood, just study, because we were forced to, and cricket were the two things that I did most of the time, because we didn't have computers and any of those things back then. Obviously, afterwards we were like, okay, what are these computer games and all that fun stuff? But yeah, that's what I remember as my childhood being like.
Did you have the opportunity to go out and play with people in your building or
In Pakistan, if you're in the army, normally you can go in these cantonment areas, which are sort of sometimes barricaded, and they're safer than, I guess, general spaces. And so it's great for kids as well. And so I'm talking about 25-30 years ago, when you play as much as possible, and we'll be crying when we're going back home. It was okay, now we have to go back home because it's sunset or whatever. But yeah, you would play all the time, and if you're not at school, you're just out playing somewhere, doing something stupid, basically.
And did that help with the nomadic lifestyle of moving around and making new friends?
Definitely, yeah. I think that just meeting new people, understanding different cultures, and also understanding different types of people, having different experiences was a big thing. So at the time, it was really painful. You make some friends for a couple of years, and you realize, I have to move again and whatever. But I had the opportunity, was very lucky to live all over Pakistan. So, in Karachi in the south, in Islamabad or Pindi, which is the capital, in Peshawar, which is in the north, in Lahore, which is another fantastic city with amazing food. So I just went all over, and many other places. I even lived in the city of Ahmedabad, which is where they caught Osama bin Laden. But it was just, just an opportunity to go and literally go everywhere, which is fantastic.
And what brought you to Australia?
So I came here as a student to do my master's in engineering management. I studied mechanical engineering from Pakistan as a bachelor. Then I came here and did my master's, and then loved Australia, like many of us do. And so, then basically have been here since the last 10 years almost. And
how was it moving here as a student without your support network and without that financial security that you have from family back home?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, moving was not as big of an issue, because not just because of moving around when I was a kid, but also because at the age of 15, I left house, which is not very common in a country like Pakistan, and was living in a different city when I was doing my high school, and actually living in a youth hostel rather than with my parents and so on. So I had a lot of independence earlier on. That's just because I wanted to go to a really good school, and where they were sort of posted, one of the army, I guess, locations wasn't it didn't have amazing schools at the time. So, and then when I went to uni, it was the same thing. The uni was also in this sort of small town where, it was everyone lived there and everyone sort of studied there. So it was kind of like a university town. So I probably lived 7-8 years already out of home before coming to Australia. So it was really helpful in just navigating my way through stuff. So, but still coming here was challenging, like it is for many immigrants. And particularly, I guess, building that initial network. But what I found was that because I came here as an international student to Wollongong Uni, they had a lot of, clubs and societies in the university where you could go and actually, participate in, for example, the Indian Society or the Pakistani Society, or, where you would go to, the chess club or cricket, or, all sorts of different things, which was really great because you could go and meet friends there. And then also, I guess, I got lucky in the sense that I had a couple of friends from my uni back in Pakistan, and they also came over because they were like, oh, you're going, we should go too. And so that was great. So, we had someone to rely on and sort of share, all of our challenges with. Plus, it was pretty tough, like finding a job and, just like studying and working and all those kind of things that I guess many international students do.
And international students are restricted to 20 hours of work. How did you manage that restriction and all your finances?
Yeah, I was really lucky and privileged that my parents were like, we'll help you with this. I came here for like a 1 year long degree at the time. So like for the first semester, they're like, yeah, we'll pay your fee. Then it's up to me to sort of try to figure out some of the living expenses, which was, doable in that sort of 20 hours. And I guess in the sort of second semester, what happened was that I got a bit of a loan as well from family, and that also helped, not parents, but other members of the family. And so that helped me get to the second semester, and then when I got a job, I was able to pay them back. But yeah, like if you also wanted to pay your fee and work, you probably couldn't do it unless, worked on cash, which I know many people do.
Yeah, and it's because they're forced to. Yeah. There's no other option, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what were some of your initial jobs at university?
Yeah, so many different types of jobs. I worked at, most of them, I guess, were related to like working at service stations. If you're going to get into one, that you'll get to another and another. So I worked at 7-Eleven, I worked at the BP and sort of Caltex and those kind of stores. And then like other things like, dishwashing and, like car washing and those kind of things.
Moving on from university, how was your experience trying to enter the professional career?
It was really tough to find as a professional job. So I was, applying for at least 2 years to get into work. I was doing volunteering on the side, doing all sorts of stuff, but just wasn't getting anywhere. Applied for many jobs, but only got like, 1 or 2 interviews. And didn't get those jobs either. And the sort of main thing was either I was overqualified for stuff because I already had a master's and not having local experience in Australia, which I'm sure you've heard of many times, or they were like, no, you don't have the right concepts or skills or whatever. So it's like, how can be overqualified and also don't have skills at the same time? So it was a bit weird.
What did you do when you weren't able to get your professional break?
I actually decided to just go quit my own job. I was working at a BP, doing a night shift, trying to stack shelves. I was looking at basically these sort of pet food that I had to stack, so things like cat, food and dog food and so on, and really quickly looking at the different ingredients that they had. And the ingredients had things like chicken, and I was sort of thinking to myself, what kind of weird people are we as humans that we have to, basically kill one animal, package it, sell it to be sold to, be fed to another animal? Like, who gets to decide, and to sort of do this kind of thing? It's a weird thing in nature. Like,
how are we to decide the pecking order?
Yeah, that kind of thing. Cats want chicken, they can go and grab them or whatever. Like, what are we doing? But then I sort of stepped back and I was like, hang on, this is not good for my mental health. What I'm doing, I'm overthinking this stuff. I just met yourself jobs. But then I decided, look, I'm just going to stop searching for a job and asking other people, but just go and create my own job. So I got into a program run by this organization called School for Social Entrepreneurs. It was an incubator for young people who wanted to start social enterprise based in Parramatta. I went there and did the program. And that was really good because that not just only, I guess, gave me more confidence, but also gave me an ability to find a community of other people and social entrepreneurs who wanted to start stuff. So when I went into that program, because of my engineering background, I had an idea of working in sort of clean tech and renewable energy and those types of things. But just going through and validating my ideas, realized pretty quickly how busy that market is. And I'm talking even back then, 2014, 2015. So I decided, look, I wanted to do something different and something that's sort of more meaningful. I also had an amazing mentor who told me to try and solve a problem that I faced. And so I think that's still something that I remember really vividly. And then I went, hang on, I've sort of faced this issue of, being a migrant here, struggling to find employment, particularly meaningful employment. So, and I'm in an incubator trying to start my own business. Wouldn't it be great if we had an incubator, particularly for migrants and refugees and, people who are coming from all sorts of different, sources to Australia, to try and start their own business, right? Because I knew anecdotally just how many people in my own network were international students are struggling, but then also, did some research and found at the time 60% of migrants and refugees were either unemployed or underemployed in Australia, right? So this is back in 2016. I don't know what the stats are right now, but that was a huge difference compared to, like your average, like unemployment rates of general populations, which was about 5%. Unemployment about 10-15% underemployment. So it's a big, big gap, like 10-15 times higher. And I was like, okay, there's something there, I need to sort of focus on it. So literally just designed a pilot without knowing anything. And with a co-founder. So I found a co-founder who, his name is Jacob. He actually was kind of the opposite. So he was like also a reverse migrant. He was working in accounting in like a reputable firm here in Sydney. I decided he didn't want to do that anymore for whatever reason. He went to Bangladesh to go and work with Mohammed Yunus and like their sort of team around microfinance, and really just got inspired by that and was back and was also part of that program and trying to figure out like what to do next and where to focus. And so we basically connected really well through some of the sessions and mentoring that we had together there. And decided we wanted to sort of start this thing. Again, had no idea. We were like, we'll copy half of this program that we were in, and Skills Entrepreneurs already knows this, so it's fine. And then, we'll just try and cobble up something to try and test and pilot. So we ran our first pilot, which was 2 months, took in 10 people from a local migrant sort of resource center who had people who wanted to start a business, but didn't have a particular, service provider to help them. And for us, the benchmark was if all these 10 people finish their program, we'll feel ourselves successful and lucky because, we didn't know what we were doing, but at least it meant that, we were able to run through it once. But what we found was that out of those 10, 3 actually started a business, right? Which was fantastic.
Yeah, which is great.
And that gave me personally a lot of confidence that, look, we don't know what we're doing, and still, these people are like starting their businesses. The thesis that we had was that migrants, refugees are really resilient, have a lot of grit. They just need someone to believe in them and provide them some confidence and help them with the networks and those kind of really basic things that a lot of people take for granted. But otherwise, if you do, then, we're all very highly entrepreneurial, and so we can really go and take that and create something. And we saw that happen in real time. We had one of the people who was basically had everything planned out, but just was not willing to take the risk and jump.
It's a risk, right?
It is, absolutely. And they had savings, they had everything. They even had clients that they could start with. It was a small migration sort of consulting type business. And so we basically had one of these sort of mentoring sessions where he was like, thank you. And after the session, I'm going to go and leave my job and start it. It's just such a small thing, in the sort of context of the program, but it's a huge thing for that person's life.
Yeah.
And that meant that they, from that day onwards, they're not like an employee, but a business owner. And I think that gave us, again, that confidence that we could do it. So over the last 7 years, I've spent a lot of time learning about startups and entrepreneurship, doing so many different programs, have been really privileged to meet so many amazing people like yourself and different mentors who've helped us, get to where we are. And we've had lots of different iterations of the program that we run.
How many migrants and refugees have you helped so far?
So far, the last count is we've helped about 750 migrants and refugees in the last 6.5, 7 years, which is still, mind-boggling.
That's incredible. And I think there are still so many out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there. And so I think we're just getting started for us because, for the first 5 years, we're just even trying to figure out our way, and COVID happened. And so from a timing perspective, I'm a first-time founder, or was a first-time founder when I started it, so I had to learn at the same time as everyone else around the program. And so I think a lot of those learning goes to happen now, hopefully, so we can sort of go forward and actually try and create something even bigger and better.
And so what did you do yourself? Because you were learning along the process, along with everyone else. What did you do to upskill yourself faster than the others?
Well, I don't know if I did upskill myself faster than the others, but I just tried to listen a lot and really be there and be present. So, for example, we'll have different amazing mentors coming in through the programs or helping other founders. So I would always be there. I think that was one of the basic things. And then I also participated in other programs that are for social entrepreneurs or that are for startup founders and who wanted to learn or who wanted to learn through certain things and test ideas and so on. So I did a bunch of programs in Australia, I did a program overseas as well. And that gave me both, some knowledge, but also particularly the community of people who sort of bounce ideas off and go to. And this is one of those things, it's very hard to be vulnerable, particularly, when you are running a business, and we know this because, we work with different founders, but, especially if you're running a program, and you can be vulnerable at certain points, but if you are a train wreck, then people are not going to sort of trust you or go with you along the journey. So you need to have your own community of founders or other people that are outside of that, space to, just do what you want to do and really sort of share the highs and the lows of the startup and, entrepreneurship journey. And that's something that I think was the biggest thing for me is having that community of people that I can go to and connect with.
I think that's such a big thing because you're right. It is a roller coaster and you have to take care of yourself first and foremost. So apart from the support network that you had, were there any other tools or resources that you used to manage your own mental health and yourself actually?
I think in terms of tools, not really. I don't think there's any specific tools, but it was definitely just mentoring and looking at what people did and what, how they manage everything. Because again, I didn't have a lot of bias, because I didn't have a lot of experience working in other sort of larger companies or whatever. So I sort of was learning everything the first time, but still, going through the process of being a founder, you realize how overwhelming that is and you have to do everything all at once. And so how do other people manage it, right? What kind of books they read, what kind of resources they do, what kind of, I guess, hacks they have or mental models they have to really help them in that kind of sense. It was more a conversation with different people and understanding that. And that really helped me and sort of continues to help me as well. So there wasn't any particular, I guess, thing or like a particular tool. It was more around just like, understanding what people do. Some people say you need to switch off. So initially I was sort of working 7 days a week. Terrible idea. Do not recommend. And it was like, no, like very gung-ho, startup bro founder saying, look, this is, of course we're going to go do this in the world or whatever.
I think many founders can relate to that.
And then like 2 years on, I was like, no, I'm burning out. This is not great. So, and like, some of the mentors that we had were telling me, no, don't do it. But you often think that you were different or you were special. You're not. You're a human being like everyone else. Your body needs to rest and sleep and, do all of that. So what at the time, I started taking at least 1 day off a week. So if Sunday was one of those days I was like, I'm not going to do anything related to work. I'll just, go to it, like do hiking or something like it's like outside of work. So that was really great. I think the other thing that I did was over time develop like more positive habits that are not just purely within, I guess, your startup or within your work. And so, like making more friends, going to different events that are not sort of startup and founder related, picking up new hobbies, even reinvigorating some of those old hobbies. Like, for example, when I was, a student, so studying and working and then starting Catalysr, just had no time to do anything else. So, like, I loved playing cricket in Pakistan, but then coming here, I just wasn't doing it. So, like, after a few years, I was like, well, I need to do something for myself. And that was one of those things that I picked up. So I started playing cricket again, like, just for fun. So I've been doing that for the last 2 years, and that's been really fantastic. So just literally, you don't think anything about your business because you're, like, on the cricket pitch and working and playing and so on.
Yeah, and I think that's a great tip. Like, honestly, taking a break from the startup, the founder world, and going into a social element, and especially something that combines exercise, has also been a savior for me. I know you've done a lot of programs. Tell me about your experience with Singularity University and how that's shaped your thinking.
So Singularity University, for those of you who don't know, is an incredible organization. Number one, they're not a university, they're just an organization. But what they're looking at is how are exponential technologies changing the world and will, basically having a huge impact on everyone. So for them, exponential technologies are sort of building off of, we've heard about this in Moore's Law around like computers and transistors and how like that computing power is doubling every year. That's kind of happening in many different industries, right? So they're exponentially changing and increasing and developing. So whether you look at the artificial intelligence or, AR, VR, space tech, biotech, there's all these kind of different things that are moving really rapidly and changing. And what they do is they're on this program, which I participated in back in 2017, called the Global Solutions Program. And they brought in about 90 people from across the world to come to the US, they've got this sort of NASA Ames Research Center in California, which is, kind of in the middle of the Bay Area. So you go there, you stay there for, 3 months. You're just like fully immersed. You have lectures for the first few weeks around literally all of these technologies. So they'll bring in like Stanford professors who bring startup founders, all sorts of different people, investors, to talk about their perspectives on like AI or 3D printing or any of these kind of industries at large. Then they also have a theme for a particular program. So the program that I was in, because I was really passionate about climate change and climate action, their I guess sort of thing was around climate change. So that's the other thing, that we have many climate experts who came in and talk about their sort of perspectives and how we could think about climate solutions. But I think the most important critical thing about the whole thing was it wasn't just about network, it was also about ambition. And I think this is where this can be a double-edged sword, but I think in the US they do it really well. Is like they want you to be bold, want you to be really ambitious. And they said that, for many people who, if you want to make $1 billion in a sort of social enterprise setting, you should help 1 billion people. And so it's really having that mindset of, like actually having a positive impact on 1 billion people. And how can that work? Because we've got problems like, electricity and energy. We've got problems in like inequality, in, all sorts of different areas that, affect literally 1 billion people or more. And so how can you really go and attack those huge, massive problems? And what they ask you to do is come up with what they call an MTP. So many of the people have heard of an MVP, which is a minimum viable product. They talk about MTP, which is the massive transformative purpose. So think about what is your life's like big mission and purpose, and how can you sort of live your life and try to solve these like long-term complex problems that can help 1 billion people. So very different mindset, very ambitious. And it's kind of like, infectious because you're around those kind of people. Also, it's not just founders. So there's some researchers, there's some people, who work or whatever, and they like did a really good job in like doing the right kind of cohort. But then for some of those people who took specific ideas to that, they could also be kind of an incubator and then start them and get funding and so on as well.
So it's sort of like a mental exercise to stretch yourself. How did that reshape your thinking for Catalysr?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I went in there, I was initially thinking of, and this is, Catalysr people don't know this, but I was initially thinking of, well, is there a way that Catalysr can be completely automated, right? Can we do it completely AI-driven globally to support many migrant refugees? And at the time, I don't think the tech was there. I don't know if the tech is still there yet or whether it's a good idea to do it or not. But that was, I guess, my thinking. That's what I applied with as my initial idea. When I went in there, I got really fascinated and interested in space tech. So I was just going in that direction. But there's a lot of learnings that I took from that I sort of applied to Catalysr. So I guess the key thing was that there's no one particular way to scale, particularly when you're looking at social enterprise. And so, the broader mindset was really fantastic. And using technology to be able to create the right kind of business models and scale was fantastic to learn. But I think one of the things, the biggest thing that I took away was you can scale by the traditional startup way, which is you think about we're Airbnb, who would just open up in a lot of cities and sort of grow that way, or alternatively do other kind of interesting and innovative models. And so something that we're doing right now is looking at how do you create a global network, and then how do you do this sort of idea of social franchising, where you can build something in one place, but also see how you can particularly partner with local organizations, particular contexts who understand what the needs are, and then try and sort of replicate that impact or even grow that impact that is very local, very specific in those different places. And so getting some of those learnings was really fantastic, just going through that program and just that whole community.
Yeah, incredible. And I'm sure the participants of Catalysr have also benefited from that. Tell us about some of the businesses that have gone through Catalysr.
There's so many, right? But one of them who you might have come across is, because we have both tech and social enterprise, when we started in our, early journey, we were very agnostic to literally any kind of business, small business, whatever. But then over the years, we've sort of quickly focused on tech and social enterprise. So a good example of a fantastic social enterprise business that we have is what the Creative Cooperative is doing, who you might know. Incredible founder, really great work in supporting, women of color get access to tech. So started with helping people get into jobs, also now running some startup one-on-one programs as well, which is really fantastic, and doing lots of other stuff that even sometimes I can't get my head around. It's really fantastic. Yeah. So that's one example. And they only went into the program in 2020. So they're very, very recent in how when they started. And when they came to Catalysr, they were basically this is our idea, we want to start this. And so it's just so great to see that progression and the work that they've done. The other one is a company called Spiral Blue. I've sort of become more interested and passionate about space tech, which is one of the reasons why I like this company. What they're doing is they've created hardware that improves the processing capability of satellites. And so, 20 times, 30 times improve the data processing. And currently the problem with the satellite industry is particularly in the lower Earth orbit, that you have these issues with sending data up and down because there's certain infrastructure that's around the place. So they can fix that by actually processing the data on the satellite and just only sending whatever the outcomes of the results are. So they've had funding from the Australian Space Agency. They've actually physically launched their prototypes on a rocket with Virgin Orbit. I think they're doing their next mission to SpaceX soon, and raising capital and doing all that kind of stuff. So, and they only went through a program in late 2018. So to launch a space business and get the kind of traction 2-4 years is incredible. That's another one that's fantastic. And literally, Tofik, who's the founder, came to Catalysr with an idea. He was I want to do this. He was doing a PhD at UNSW at the time in aerospace engineering. And basically, it wasn't just us. And this is one of the things that I say all the time. I can't take credit for the work, A, because they're the ones doing the work, but also because Catalysr isn't the only thing in their journey.
Catalysr is a catalyzer.
Yes, absolutely, right? So yes, we connect them with mentors and support and all of that, but that's obviously for a fixed period of time, and they're part of our community. But then what we really want to do is really want many of these migrants, refugees to be connected to the whole ecosystem. So in Spiral Blue's case specifically, they, after going to Catalysr, they went through a CSRO program, which was helping them in physical prototyping, which is fantastic, and giving them the sort of, infrastructure that we don't have. Then they went through Antler as well. So they've gone through these various different things, and eventually, after a few years, have gotten to a point where, now they're becoming investable and so on. So the journey oftentimes is quite different if you're just coming in with an idea or a really, really early stage founder. But I don't think there's as many places for people to go, even generally, but specifically when you come from a migrant refugee background to start their startup.
And it does take a bit more support, and those networks are brand new, so you need to create them from scratch. So going through these accelerator programs and things like that are definitely very useful, I believe. You at Catalysr have great gender parity. How did you achieve that, and what can others learn from you?
Well, I think we're lucky as well, because you can't really control who applies and what happens, but we've tried to become as close to 50-50 as possible. When we started, we struggled in the first sort of year or two. So I can be sort of really honest and frank about that. Then I guess what happened was, because we've got to focus not just on technical social enterprise, but I guess more female founders who focus on social elements as well. So that's one of the ways that, and this is not the reason why I'm focusing on social enterprise. That kind of happened anyway. And the other thing that was interesting, or something that I guess was by design, was that our entrepreneurs residents, majority of them were female founders and female migrant entrepreneurs. I think that's the other thing. Everyone who's our entrepreneur residents also comes from migrant or refugee entrepreneurship background. So they've lived this whole thing. And now we're getting to a point where actually even get some alumni coming through and doing that. So that was one of the things. We also had our head of operations. Previously, it was also a female migrant entrepreneur. Before that, we had a community manager. She was also a female entrepreneur. So it's having those, it's not just me that people get to talk to or see, but it's also having them, and then them also giving us feedback on, you should make this program more inclusive and do this or that. But I still think we've got a long way to go, right? So supporting female founders and particularly migrant entrepreneurs through the program isn't enough. It's the same thing as, even supporting migrant entrepreneurs generally isn't enough, because that, I guess what the success rate after the programs, that's more important, and continuing business, and then also, particularly investment. So that's an area where, we haven't done too much yet, but we want to do in the future, because I think that's where many entrepreneurs sort of fall down, particularly, from migrant backgrounds, and especially if they're female founders, because the rate is even lower than other female founders. And I know how low that rate is of female founders getting investment. So I'm really grateful that Priyanka is doing what she's doing with, on the creative cooperative, because that's fantastic, and that's exactly focusing on that problem as well.
Exactly, and I think there's more room for more people to take an active part in it. What are some ways that you're looking at approaching that, supporting female founders better?
One thing we want to do is we still have, I think, an area that's a weakness for us right now is that our board is still, when we set up, and when we start Catalysr, we set up our board, just me and my co-founder Jake, and we have Alan, who is one of our board chairs, but that's it. There's only 3 people. And we want to generally increase the size of the board because that helps, but also we want to have more females, we don't have any women at the moment in there, and just more gender diversity, and also people from different experiences and backgrounds. So we want to have at least one Catalysr alum, and ideally that person also, is a female founder. So this is sort of my project over the next few months, is to try and, increase the size of the board so that we have that voice both at that sort of governance level, but then also obviously within our team, we try to keep that as well. So I think from a team side or from a resident side, you may actually have more women than men, which is awesome. But on the sort of board and the governance side, we also need that, because that obviously trickles down to everything else that we do.
Absolutely. And I think there's an empathy factor there, women understand what women are going through, and it is different.
Yeah. And challenges as well, right? Oftentimes people don't think about some different challenges, particularly in the cultural diversity context. And so having the right kind of, female mentors has been really fantastic, particularly from migrant backgrounds. So I'll give you an example of, we had someone, this was a few years ago in our program. She was an incredible founder, started a startup, and sort of midway through, when the startup was actually starting to get profitable, her partner got really jealous because, from the cultural background they were. I don't want to sort of talk about too much specifics, but they basically were like, no, you should stay home, take care of the kids. I'm the one who's going to work, and, that. And so how do you deal with that? I have no idea. And so our female, sort of migrant was really great in terms of, providing that mentoring and supporting a very difficult time, because it was I don't want this to affect my marriage, but also at the same time, I want to be a founder and I want to do this because I really love this and I'm doing well. And so I think navigating those kind of very specific challenges, there's another time where, someone also faced a domestic and family violence issue. Again, those kind of different things where, having that diversity really helps. It's not just because you understand and empathize, but also because you can give them different options and opportunities as well.
You're right. Having the right support network definitely will make a difference, and more leadership positions. Mm. In terms of your businesses at Catalysr, how many of them have sustained? And you mentioned before it was 3 out of 10 that started a business. What is the success rate now?
I wish I could tell you, this many people or this businesses are running right now, but I don't have that number, so I don't. I guess over the last couple of years, we also changed that because what we're seeing was not everyone is necessarily wanting to be a founder as well, because we've got 2 programs. We've got a fellowship program and an accelerator program. So people that are going through the accelerate, who come in with startup, not just ideas, but also MVP, and now they want to grow and build, they're the ones we want to track and see how many of them sort of continue to run and operate. But then in a fellowship, people are coming in with ideas. Some of those ideas are going to be invalidated really quickly, or they'll find a co-founder, or they'll work in another startup or in the sort of ecosystem. And those are the things that we haven't really captured yet. But I walked at the launch of Spark Festival yesterday, and one of the people that was working with Maxine, who runs Spark Fest, is also a Catalysr alumni, right? I've seen someone running other conferences like Catalysr, so I'm starting to see that happen. And some of them are continuing to run their businesses and doing other stuff, but also these kind of things. So I think when we talk about our impact, it's not just purely about the business, but other things.
And sometimes it takes several businesses to get to your purpose, coming back to the purpose and finding what really motivates and drives you. You settled on a purpose very early on, I would say. Is this it for Catalysr? What's your vision?
So when I started Catalysr, I just wanted to create my own job, really frankly. I wasn't thinking of any of this stuff to happen, right? But over time, what has happened is that we've seen this incredible, movement built of supporting migrant, particularly refugee entrepreneurs. So overseas, we got a lot of inquiries from different places, in Europe, in Africa, and different, parts of the world. And how do you do your program? What's happening? This and that. And we're sort of sharing our learnings. And also, because incubator programs are more popular, there's more programs that are starting up in different parts of the world. So back in 2018, I actually worked with an organization in the UK called CFE, Centre for Entrepreneurs. They're kind of like a policy think tank who run different things. And they set up a network, a global network on refugee entrepreneurship, which is fantastic because there's 40, 50 members that are part of that now. Some of them are running programs like us, some are sort of foundations or academics, which is really great to have that global community sort of collaborating and sharing ideas. And one of the things that I'm doing is that I'm the working group chair for program design. Then there's other working groups on funding, on monitoring valuation, and sort of this impact measurement, capital for founders, and so on. And because it's been going on for 5 years now, there's an actual summit as well happening annually. Now, so that's, what's happened since, we started Catalysr. But then the other thing that's happening and that's just growing is, we've seen a lot more conflict. In the last sort of 2-3 years specifically, when you look at Afghanistan and Ukraine, there's just a lot more refugees and immigrants generally, going through the world. And the second thing, the huge problem that we know is climate change. And in Pakistan, a few months ago, there was a flooding, and there's a lot of internally displaced people, about 33 million people were impacted, which is incredible when you think about it. So that's an area where I've, again, done some really early research, and Cornell University did this study back in 2017, where they projected that due to climate change, we could have up to 2 billion climate refugees by the end of this century. So the projected population is around 11 billion, so that's about 20% of people, or 1 in 5 people might be a climate refugee, and they will be coming from all over the world. There will obviously be a lot of inequity. So, if you're living in Australia, you might be able to relocate a bit easier than, if you're living in Bangladesh. And so that's, one of those things that, it's a figure that I can think of. And we don't want to get to that point and then try and say, what do we do? Even with the way, the whole refugee crisis is being dealt with, it's not adequate. There's a lot of deficit mindset of, refugees will come and take our jobs and they're going to integrate our society. Many people are languishing in refugee camps for years and decades. And so really what I want to do personally, and this is sort of Catalysr, is try and take that problem, really think about climate refugees. So it's the climate change I'm passionate about anyway, and climate action, but also think about migration and trying to bring them together. And what can we do collectively, not just in Australia, but globally as this sort of network to try and address and scale up our programs and our services so we can try and maybe even try to scratch the surface of that particular challenge. I'm not saying that we will be able to do it or I'll be able to do it, but we want to start that work now because it will take decades to get anywhere near, doing something meaningful. So my vision for the future is that migrants and refugees are seen as an incredible asset to the societies and countries that they go to, because they do contribute a lot in economic and social benefit.
And you're absolutely right. I was reading an article the other day about how climate change and environment is being tackled in different ways at the moment, and we're focusing on the corporates, but we need diversity of thought and perspective in it to think about things like refugees from climate change displacement. And I think the work that you're doing is incredible. Thank you so much, Usman, for your time. Honestly, I think we could continue this conversation for a lot longer. Love the work you're doing at Catalysr, and really hope many others get inspired to support and help migrants and refugees, and also to tackle climate change as well in conjunction with it.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for this amazing opportunity. It's fantastic and really lovely chatting to you and even thinking about some of that old stuff in Pakistan.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to the Startup Power Show. If you had a blast listening to this episode, come on board and join our incredible cheer squad. Spread the startup love by sharing the episode with your friends, leave us a review, or drop us your valuable feedback, comments, or burning questions. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll shine the spotlight on another startup superstar. I'm Preeti Mohan, and I look forward to seeing you next time.